Hello and welcome everybody to our webinar session this afternoon for the participants from Central Europe, and good evening or good morning from wherever you're joining right now. We'd like to present you today our webinar, Remote Testing for Automotive Hardware and how digital platforms make end-to-end testing flexible. Let's have a view on our agenda for today. We want to show you what happens when software meets real hardware and what challenges of software deployment come with limited hardware availability. We further going to show you what our remote test lab is a good enhancement of existing test beds like hardware in the loop or software in the loop. And as a very big highlight, we're going to present you a showcase where you're going to see how remote control is done via remote messages or robot with our actual software as a service. We plan to have a small question and answer session at the very end. If you have any question, just feel free to send via the chat. And we're going to try to answer it during the session or, as I said, at the end of the session. Nevertheless, you can reach out at any time afterwards, and for every single question that can't be answered right now in this session, we're going to answer it afterwards. To give you the notice, this session is going to be recorded. With your participation, you declare your acceptance with that, but that's just a legal hint. I said we, so let's introduce the team. Speaking, it's me, Marcel Müller. I'm a business development consultant for the remote test lab. The tribe lead and management representative is Uwe Hassler. And the squad lead and product owner for the remote test lab is Gregorio Loriguillo Gonzalez. Gregorio, would you be so kind and start up the session for us?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much, Marcel. Let me start with a couple of words about the motivation that brought my colleagues and myself to deal with this topic of remote testing after Uwe's initiative. It's no secret when I say that we originally come from the automotive sector. As such, we do bring with us some experience in the development lifecycle, starting from the initial pieces of code until integration tests on physical hardware. And in this case, especially testing on real hardware. I guess that I don't have to say a lot regarding the general trends here. I mean, the USP of, in our example, automotive manufacturers, respectively their products, vehicles, is no longer some technical feature or a well-established brand or something. It is the digital services, means the software. Cars more and more are what we would call software defined. The software defined car is what is becoming reality more and more. Short advertisement, by the way, there is also a very interesting complementary webinar, a complementary white paper about this topic that you can download from the T-Systems website. Yet, it's in the nature of things that this software that we develop here does not run on standard PCs or servers, but inside the device here, the car itself. And as such, it is coupled to the specific hardware, and of course, wants to be tested in an integrated way. And I can talk a bit about the experience that we made here. When working in such development projects, you often observe some kind of temperature chart that I have tried to depict here in this slide. It starts here on the left with some, I would call it positive excitement as soon as a piece of software is ready to test. So like, let's see if we can break it. And in the beginning, it starts quite easy, I would say. It's mostly just about testing on lower levels, module level, component level, probably even system level, but without an integration into physical hardware, but just on simulators or what we would call a reference environment. Here, there's plenty of process models, tools, methods available, and so on. I will not go into details regarding this. And more often than not, we leave the battleground with a feeling like, well, quality is not so bad after all. But it becomes more difficult when software has to be flashed on real hardware. Very often, this prototypes that we use, because I mean, the development of the software usually goes hand in hand, or at least has a similar time scale with the development of the hardware. These prototypes are not only available just in low quantity, but moreover, they also tend to be unstable. I mean, they're under development as well. And they have been produced by another vendor than the software comes from. Yeah, so this gives you some of these pain points that I've tried to depict here. I do remember, if I may talk about my own experience here, very well, a very embarrassing moment when I myself I broke a head unit working at a customer's location with best intentions, of course. My only fault was that I tried to install some flashware onto the head unit, and then it broke. It broke and had to be sent back to the manufacturer. That was a bit awkward for me. Yeah, well. Anyway, these types of testing activities most of the times mean go to your customer location, flash the software by hand, execute the test cases, check the results, be it on the display or be it in log files, and then manually generate reports. And especially in these pandemic times that we are at the moment, this is nothing that you want to do too often. And then it goes without saying that it's hardly possible to share this hardware with anybody else. Probably even on an hourly basis, even though this may be appropriate given the usual shortage of hardware prototypes. But if you're on a customer location and have to work there in the office, this is usually not possible. And there is one thing. Let me show you this. Let me show you this funny slide here. There is one thing that I have excluded until now. In these days, lots of people talk about things like you always hear these fancy buzzwords like DevOps, agile methods, and shift left, and so on. However, when it comes to testing on real hardware, more often than not, we encounter a situation that it's described best with these words that you see here from this wise guy that was somewhere back in the 80s of the last century. We develop for a long time, we test our software, it appears to be a good quality, and then our praying was in vain. Late in the development process, we find out that we have not found bugs just because they only occur in interaction between hardware and software. A colleague of mine just recently made an analysis in his own project, and he came to a considerable amount of bugs that maybe could have been found, most probably could have been found much earlier in the development process if he only had the possibility to test on physical hardware earlier in the process. Instead, you have to go back on your marks, start over, and lose time that you usually don't have, given the current time restrictions in markets that require shorter go-to-market cycles. Yeah, that was bad luck. I mean, that was some quite story. It was funny, by the way. I mean, I had to laugh a little bit, but although, I mean, from a software quality perspective, was maybe not. I just that a couple of days ago, there was a quite interesting call with a business partner of ours, and he told us this story that he brought his car to a garage. And then in the evening, he picked it up, and eventually somebody told him what had been done. Yeah, there has also been a software update. Then he steps into the car, sits down, activates this electric seat adjustment, just to find himself pushed with a very ungentle, sudden jerk right to the steering wheel. Yeah. And I mean, there are even other stories. I don't know. At least here in Germany, it was the case. There was a very special case of an upcoming oil change service announcement that was announced on a head unit display in an electric car. Here in it was in all the newspapers. Yeah, so that was still. And these are the funny facts or the funny things that can happen. I mean, they can also be security relevant stuff, which again calls for a good testing and good testing even with the software embedded on the real hardware. In short, as I said, it's especially the interaction between software and hardware, which is an important exercise that must not be treated stepmotherly. When I would call it classical software development talks about these DevOps, shift left, agile methods, and so on, just to find bugs earlier in the software development lifecycle. And they even do testing from the very design phase on simulations and other digital representations like digital twins. In my opinion, it is paramount to start testing on real hardware as early and as intensively as possible. Yeah, so this was the basis, and then we thought, okay, what could such a remote test lab, what could it look like? Taking into consideration, I mean, a lot of things that are already there, that already exist out there in the market, and let's think about it. So enough of this gloomy thoughts, yeah, things that can happen. Now I would like to show how we did confront these with a construction that we have called this remote test lab. The possibility to remotely test use cases that usually formally have to be tested on site and usually by hand. And these thoughts are, as I said just a second ago, are based on and rely on methods that are without any doubt very well established and have already reached a certain maturity level. Let me stick to my initial example, cars, automotive. Already today, there are highly complex test beds in use. I'm talking about these hardware and the loop setups, where you can check brakes, airbags, door locks, anything, either one by one or even together. All of this up to the highest integration and yeah, literally in an entire car, although knocked down, obviously, if you will. And all of this is being done by specialized staff with specialized tools. But however, still there are some use cases where such a remote test lab that I want to talk to you about and what we have figured out can add significant value. First, there is one thing if it comes to the displays that you have everywhere. Yeah? It can even be an Amazon show or another and other consumer electronic things. But here, let's talk about the head units or the instrument clusters that you have in the car, or even the rear seat entertainment where kids usually watch movies or something. So these have to be thoroughly tested by the manufacturers themselves, as well as the OEMs. And I mean, one very significant example that we also have here, these are obviously smartphones and tablets. Now they also have these displays that need to be intensively tested, and ideally, as I'm repeating myself probably, on real hardware. Normally, however, such tests beyond simulations or other virtual representations are carried out on site and manually. There's just one remote approach that I know of that is being employed by one of our colleagues, for example, from T-Systems MMS. You might have heard of this mobile device cloud. There are other vendors as well. And then we say, well, wouldn't it be great to have such thing for other electrical devices as well? So it means to have a more generic approach and integrate displays of other hardware into such a remote test lab. Yeah, so this is the first use case that we thought of. Then second thing is the voice steering. More and more, let's call them electrical assistants, react to voice commands. I will not say the name of the small helper that I have here on my desk, else I will wake her up. Here also, an integration of a remote testing capability would be very helpful, especially if you want to test languages that are not so common, at least not over here in Germany. What we had in mind was things like MP3 uploads, for example, or an integration of text-to-speech services like many cloud providers offer, or even the classical way of speaking commands into the microphone and observe the reaction of the test device to this voice. Yeah, so this is what we had in mind. This should also be possible in a good remote test lab. Okay, third use case, a very important one. If I want to transmit commands to the test device directly for specialized developers and testers, again, what I have in mind is this automotive domain. There are professional tools. Professional tools that can simulate signals, send them to the several bus systems in a vehicle. However, for somebody in the business department who is probably not so much into IT and maybe just want to check if the doors can be remotely unlocked with his fancy app, or if somebody who wants to from business department who wants to check the digital owner's manual on real hardware, these approaches might be difficult to handle. Here some bit more user-friendly interface will be needed. For example, with widgets that you can design on your own with a widget designer, and then attach signals to these widgets in a configurable way, so as per your needs. That was our thought, very helpful. Mind you, as always in addition to existing framework. And finally, the fourth use case that we had here in mind is about the capability to remotely install software updates onto the test device. Usually, this is what I know, and colleagues and from other companies, they do it as well that I know of. Usually here we talk about a tool or framework that is installed on a PC, on a classical PC. And then this PC is connected via cable to the test device. And then the software will be copied onto this PC, either a USB stick or it's maybe placed on a network share. And then it is installed manually with this tool. You sit in front of it, you wait until it's finished, and then you can move ahead with your testing. Wouldn't it be better to be able to perform this installation procedure remotely using a comfortable web interface, maybe, or probably even better, completely automated during a nightly build? Yeah, so this was our thought, and this is the exercise that we wanted to take up. All in all, such a remote test lab that we had in mind should be comfortable, easy to use, even for non-technical people. It should be secure. This is paramount. This is very important because you want to use it from everywhere. from everywhere, and everywhere means, especially nowadays, it's the home office. You probably can see it in the background. Yeah, so this is where I am right now since quite a long time in the home office, or from any other locations. Yeah, your company might have offshore locations that that might be interested in that. And all of this, of course, for manual and automated use cases. Okay, I have one more slide here. Let me again compile all the requirements. We wanted to implement these 4 use cases: video, audio, remote device steering, remote control, say, and flashing, that facilitate remote tests, manual and automated, on physical hardware. Why is that? Why we want to do this? I mean, you have put down all the advantages that we have from here. I already talked about global access from your home office, from India. I mentioned India because my colleagues from the development team, they are mostly from India, so I guess some of those are here. So greetings over there. But that's not all. I mean, I want to reduce the travel expenses, obviously, because as I mentioned earlier, usually these tests are carried out probably by service providers who travel to the business parks and carry out the tests there on site, and this costs. Yeah, and these are costs that are incurred here, and not only cost. I mean, one very important topic is also the sustainability. Sustainability means care for your environment, and somewhere I should have placed this icon here on the slides. Yeah, there's the telecom green magenta icons that we have received to this just recently. Yeah, but anyway, reduction of travel expenses and also reduction of carbon dioxide. This is what an advantage here. Then, as I mentioned here, increased availability, reduction of setup times. Yeah, because I mean, you save all this annoying lead times in the hardware. It doesn't have to be sent anywhere. You can just place them in a central central place, and then from there it can be used. If you have lower logistics and you save all this time, this obviously has a consequence. And a consequence down the line, what you have is you need less test devices, yeah, because you can increase the utilization of them. And increased utilization means either less test devices needed, or if you stick to the amount of test devices you have this amount, then it can speed up your test cycles. Because one more thing, I mean, at least here in Germany, this is the case. In the evenings or at night, offices are closed. But with such an approach of remote testing and these being placed somewhere in a test lab, you can even go for 24/7 utilization of your test devices. Okay, what else about the? I already talked about the user friendliness, so that even users from business departments have the chance to see and check the software of their domain on real hardware. For all of this, we had a concrete example in mind. Let me talk to you about it. That in principle concerns all electronic devices that are out there. This is a digital users, so digital owners manual that more and more replaces the classical printed version. That, I mean, I have one of these printed versions in my car, but this is already a couple of years old. But in modern cars or for modern devices, this digital owner's manual replaces everything, and I have never seen a printed owner's manual for the new smartphones, for example. But then this owner's manual has to fulfill a couple of requirements. Yeah, it has to be available for so many different kinds of product lines. And ideally, it is very specific. In other users' manuals, you usually read a lot of things for some extras probably that you don't even have in your device or even your car. But here you have the possibility to have it very specific to your individual device. then it has to be available in a lot of languages. Yeah, and languages, I mean, could be when Spanish, English, and German are quite familiar to me, but then if you think of other languages that are not so familiar, at least not here, if think of Arab or Hebrew, for example, here we have the case where another language even means a different behavior of the software. Yeah, keyword is diametral scrolling, yeah, which is in this case is from right to left instead of left to right, which you also have to test. And of course, for several markets as well. And I mean, finally, it has to comply to a lot of legal requirements. So this is what we also had in mind as a concrete use case. And this, this basically was the very first customer that we had for this a couple of years ago. This was about doing tests for digital owners manuals on with the help of our software, replacing tests that before had to be done manually and on site. Okay, so finally we started the work, and let me talk to you about the product that we have then developed and how we implemented these use cases. I mean, I've repeated them often enough, so now you know the use cases. Again, from a user's perspective, what you see here in this small icon, I will show you in a while the real application. This can be invoked from Chrome. Firefox browser offers the entire functionality to the user from here. Then first there's a booking system. Yeah, this is I would say, I mean, this is nothing special if you just talk about a booking system. Every airline or every hotel has a booking system. But here, in this case, this serves the booking system, including the calendar, serves for a better utilization of the software. You could book it for 1 hour, you could book it for 10 hours, and then the hardware is reserved for you virtually, and nobody else can use it here with the booking system. And then one more thing that is implemented here in the central components is the inventory system. Hardware users, organizations, and this system or this component of the system takes care of secure storing of this data. I mean, obviously, we only use the minimum amount of data. Then there's one more thing that it's not on the slides. Yeah, eventually I have to add it. I'm talking about the user interface designer that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. That gives me the possibility to create own widgets and layouts that can be coupled to own commands that can be sent to the device. For example, widget that steers the ignition of the car on, off, and so on. Or car status, is it locked, is it open, is it unlocked, and so on. And then, of course, there are several security mechanisms that prevent unauthorized access. Starting with an IP whitelist. Yeah, we can probably see afterwards. IP whitelists so that only authorized users can even see the login page. Yeah, maybe you will see later on. We have a website that explains a little bit about our product. But once you click on login, you will only see this login page if you are an authorized customer and you are on the IP whitelist. Else, I guess that our Nginx server will just send you an error message. This is one thing, or a couple of examples. A reverse proxy, for example, that hides the concrete test devices behind it, so that they cannot be so that they are not directly exposed in the network. And and then of course, I mean, user ID password that goes without saying, and done other things like the APIs and so on. Okay, what else? The flashing API I have already this I have already mentioned. Okay, maybe a couple of more words regarding the build-up, the setup of the architecture that you can see here on the left-hand side. And I would say the standard version of remote test lab. We call it customer independent components, central components. In the standard setup, they are deployed in the secure Open Telecom cloud. Besides the features that I have just mentioned and that you see here, there are some. There's a couple of more, like an automated mailing system. You have a test management component that can be connected to standard test management tools like Jira, X-Ray, and so on. And these central components, these have a couple of APIs. To be more concrete, for every use case, for every one of the 4 use cases that I will not repeat once more, it has an API that can be then connected to the so-called local hardware-specific components. Because I mean, as I said, there's a bunch of central components that is deployed centrally on a central server, and the standard variation is it is on the Open Telecom cloud. And then you have they can be coupled to the local components using these APIs, and in between there is this orchestration layer here. I will not go into too many details, but of course, I mean, feel free either to ask questions in the chat, or if you're interested, you can always get in touch with Marcel or myself, so that we can give you a more detailed insight into the system and what we can do with it. Okay, a bit more probably why do we have these things? Customer specific, customer non-specific components. I mean, there are, for example, if you want to see the display of your test device, for this usually we would need a frame grabber. A frame grabber that grabs the images from the device, converts them to a video stream, and then makes them available in our application, for example. And this may be a different frame grabber for different hardware devices, obviously, or for the remote control, therefore sending messages to the test device. If we talk about automotive hardware, for example, usually you have frameworks and specialized cables to talk to it, to the CAN bus, for example, or to other hardware buses in the car. And here usually use some specialized frameworks. There are several of them out there, like Canoe, Optolizer, or lots of car OEMs have own solutions that they have developed themselves, and they have to be connected to remote test lab. Usually we do this. In a proof of concept at the beginning. I mean, we have quite some experience here already, but still, usually we start with a POC to prove that one use case. This is usually what the POC is about. We implement one use case, and then to make sure that it works good. I would like to mention one very flexible solution that maybe I can show it afterwards. This is steering via a robot, a touch robot. It looks like this. You have the display on your web application, and then you can, in the manual way, you just click on to the display. And by clicking on the display, the robot catches the place where you have clicked on it and transforms it to a command, so that the robot touches the display on exactly the same place, touching or even or swiping. So maybe there's one more thing that I have just mentioned in just half a sentence, but might be a bit more interesting now that I think of it. This is the connection to test management tools. Yeah, so this is what we have implemented now, Jira X-Ray, but could be any other test management tool that offers APIs. Usually, you don't want to test manually a lot. Yeah, so better than clicking around manually is test automation. Yeah, being that you want to execute several commands in a row or several robot commands in a row. If you don't want to do this using the widgets, then you usually design these test cases in test cases in your test management tool, for example, X-Ray, but could also be HP. No, it's not HP, it's Micro Focus now. Micro Focus Quality Center. Here you can store the test cases with the scripts and just let the remote test lab invoke these test cases, execute them for you, and write back via the API the results of it into the software. Maybe a word for techies here that are probably interested. The remote test cases, this would remote automated test cases, we record them in a script in some kind of JSON format, and the robot itself. Here we have G code commands, which is a standard here, standard for 3D printers and these kinds of robots. Okay, what else? Yeah, I talked about the standard way of deploying remote test lab. But of course, this is not the only way. Yeah, I mean, we are also open for an on-premise installation. When we install it in Open Telecom Cloud or in any other telecom cloud, usually then we do a network peering with the network where the hardware is located, which is proven to be a very secure solution. But of course, we are also open to do this to do an on-premise installation, for example, via MSI packages or so, for customers who prefer to do the update services and so on, or to the maintenance of the hardware by themselves. Yeah, so this of course is also possible here. Okay. So what else? I would say enough theory. Let's have a brief look into the software itself. Let me have a look. So I have to log in. I mean, if you have any kind of questions, just feel free, put them into the chat, and then I can try to answer them.
Gregor, we indeed received a question we can try to answer right now while you try to log in.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
The question is, how do you differ the solution, the remote test solution, from a standard or common, as it is written, remote desktop client connection?
Yeah,
What's the
this is
difference?
yeah, I understand this question because I mean, indeed, this was one thing that we initially also talked about. Okay, what is better here in this solution than just connecting via remote desktop via RDP? And this is definitely, first of all, a security. This is one reason, and then user friendliness. Yeah, so these are the two major topics that are important to mention here. I mean, if you give RDP access, you have to be very careful to restrict the access to the computer so that there's no harm being done over there. So for, say, normal business users, this is usually not the right way, first from the security perspective, and then also from a user friendliness. Yeah, basically what you want to do is you want to give the customer just the functionality that he or she wants. And this is it's possible in a much more user-friendly way if you offer the customer a user interface. Okay, I hope that this answers more or less the question. What you see here is our website. Yeah, this is accessible to anyone, so feel free. I guess that we'll send this across after the webinar, where you have some more explanation and some advertisement, of course, about our remote test lab solution. You have a YouTube link here where we have where I do explain and show in a couple of words what remote test lab is about. So if you want to see some more details or see them once again, watch them once again, feel free to take a look here. And if you want to get in touch with us, yeah, I mean there are other license offers where you can request, and if you want to read a bit more in detail what our scenario is about, and you can always download our complimentary white paper here. Yeah, so we explain and elaborate a bit more on the situation and everything. So yeah, feel free to have a look. And then, let me briefly walk you through some features of our application. I will not go too much into details. Yeah, but again, if you're interested, just get in touch with us, and myself and Uwe will be happy to show you a bit more on this. We could start here, for example, with a list of test units. Yeah, so right now I'm logged in as an administrator user, so I will see probably a bit more than other users will. And what I have here is the list of available or probably not available test units. So this is what we see here. I can as a master user, I could even edit the details in the inventory system, book them. This is what we will do in a minute, or show the software details and versions and so on. If it's not available, I can just click on it and it will show me why. I also talked about the booking system that we have here, and in the booking system you can even see, okay, what bookings have there been. This is obviously a master user functionality. And then what's pretty interesting is the booking calendar that gives me the possibility to book one of the head units for some time in the future. Now I have a daily view. I could switch to the weekly view, for example, to see, okay, I can book probably tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. For Saturday, it's blocked, yeah, but this doesn't have to be like that. Yeah, this is a configuration thing that we can manage the booking calendar if you want to configure holidays, for example, and that stuff. And here, if I know probably already that I want to perform some manual test in a couple of days or so, then I can choose another day and say, okay, what would I like to have? Some test unit here. Just do the right click, and then I can add a new booking and reserve the head unit here, so that at this time it will be reserved just for me. Yeah, okay. I mean, users organizations management is probably not as interesting. This is some standard functionality like, okay, add users, edit users, delete users, change passwords, and so on. Manage the organizations where I can assign the users to. What's probably a bit more interesting is the layout and widget management. This is a concept that I talked about a couple of minutes ago, where I can design a layout. Probably there will be just an organizational user who does it, so not so many people will do it. Here I have a couple of widgets. We'll check the widgets later on, and then I can put together these widgets to a layout. Yeah, that then looks probably like this. And here I can grab these widgets and move them around, probably if I want to place them in another somewhere else. As we are going to use it, I will not change it right now, but these are the widgets. Here we have this push to talk widget. This is for the sound use case that I talked about, where I want to like upload MP3 files, for example, or choose another way of sending voice commands. Okay, and what else? There was this, the widget manager. This is probably also quite interesting. Here I can manage or edit widgets and assign commands to it. Yeah, I mean, I can choose any kind. I mean, you know this from any other user interface designer. And then for every edit box or drop down list and so on, I could add specific messages. I would think that in a 1 hour call, I wouldn't go too much into details here, but yeah, as I said, if you're more interested in it, feel free to contact us. Maybe just one more thing before we just book a head unit and you can see what can be done with it. This is what I talked about, the test case management. Here you can see a bunch of test cases that we have here. But they are not really stored in remote test lab. I mean, what you see here, this test case ID and with this link, this is a link to an external Jira that we have. I mean, if I click on it, it will jump to the test management system, and after login, I can see the test case. Yeah, I mean, this was a so-called remote test case, which means this is an automated test case with a script in this. Well, I called it for the techie guys. I already mentioned it. This is some kind of JSON format that we see here, and if I use the filtering functionality, I could also probably have a look at the so-called G-code test cases. These are test cases for the robot. Yeah, because I mean, as I said, I might have a use case where I want to test things manually. But if not, I mean, if I want to test things in an automated way, this is the way to go. Yeah, I mean, in this here we have this robot test case, and what you can see here, this comes a bit cryptic. This is the G-code script that then talks to the robot. Okay, yeah, I think this is the main interesting functionality. I mean, we can jump back here to the test units, and let me just take one of these test units here so I can book it. And let's see. I mean, it gives me the information here. I can book it for a couple of hours. I mean, we just have 10 more minutes, so 1 hour should be enough. I can choose my layout. Yeah, there may be different layouts, out there. And once booking it, as I said, I booked it now immediately because it was available. I can also book for some time in the future and then come back as soon as the time has come for my booking. So now what you can see here, this is not a simulation. This is the display of a real vehicle head unit that is located in a test lab somewhere near the Leinfeld in the Stuttgart area. So this is where we are. So we have a real display attached to it. So if you were now standing in front of it, you could now probably see how it reacts. It reacts and moves as if somebody were doing these movements here. I mean, I'm just doing it by a click here on this navigation widget. If I click to the right, for example, it moves to the right. If I click to the left, it goes to the left. And this is as if I were doing a clicking or swiping operation. And this is how I can manually perform my test cases. And then I can click on OK. Maybe a couple of words regarding these icons over here. This is the automation capability. Yeah. So what I could do is, I'm not going to do it now. This would be probably going too far, but it can click here and then start a recording. And then in the background, it will record everything that I do. It can grab images. Not now. Well, you can see it only if it is running. This will work, and store this, say, automatically as a test case in the connected Jira X-Ray with the test script just as you have seen it just a minute ago. Start it, stop it, grab images, and this is the small automation recorder that we have over here. Yeah, this is one way of doing it, and then there's one other way. Maybe it is more interested to demonstrate this if you can see on the other screen. So I would like to show you how the robot works, but instead of just showing you, let me show it to you via split screen so that you can see the robot itself, so that you can see that it's not a fake, basically. What we have done here is we have installed a webcam right beside our head unit, so that we can watch what happens in reality, and then see the robot movements. No, this was the wrong email. So this now, unfortunately, will take a minute because I have to log in here to the. So maybe while I do this login, I don't know if maybe there's a question out there. Just as I said, feel free to answer. Feel free to ask your questions, and I can try to answer it. Else, I'm almost there. Because what I'm doing now is I'm logging in to the remote computer, and so that we can see the webcam. Because what will happen now is, so basically the functionality, I can click somewhere here onto the display, and you will see that it is as if I were touching the display directly. Okay, so this quite long procedure, but I'm almost there. Second.
Theo, maybe you can quickly answer the question that is raised: with which systems or hardware the application is tested so far?
As I mentioned some time ago, our core competency lies in automotive hardware. So this is where we have already done implemented several use cases, like testing the digital owner's manual, for example, or doing the flashing and testing of remote test cases. This is where we came from, but we are not. We do not stick to this. I mean, as I said, our application is flexible enough to be used with other devices as well. Yeah. So usually we start here with a POC. And just to find out, okay, what use case are we talking about? Somebody more interested in the video use case, or in audio use case. In that case, we have to implement and configure more additional hardware. Yeah, and this is where we usually start with. Yeah, but where we have some, I would say plenty of experience, this is the automotive realm. Okay, so what you can see here is here on the right-hand side. This is a webcam that is installed directly above the real display of the head unit. Yeah, and you can see this is the application. This is the real head unit with a webcam. And here on the top left corner, you can see the robot arm. And now what I can probably do is, if I do the click on info, then in a moment, yeah, you can see that the robot arm will touch it, and the owner's manual is displayed. Okay, then I can do a click here, And so I just did one click on owner's manual. You can see that the robot has performed this action, and so on. Yeah, now I could work with this. And now, I mean, it's up to me to decide whether whether I want to go for such a manual use case, yeah, because I want to work with work and see it directly, yeah. Then I can work either with this robot thing, or I can use this widget that I have here to send the simulated commands. Yeah, so you can both in parallel. Yeah, I would say. Yeah, and then yeah, so let's click here, for example, and clicking on the home button, it will move back home. Yeah, so I mean this is basically the functionality. I'm obviously showing it to you when doing the manual tests. Automated tests would also be a, don't know, even maybe more practical use case, because you can just run a test set. You would grab it here from the test case management. What you could do is you can select the test set. This can even be done in X-ray itself, where you can put together test cases into a test set, and when you want to run it, you can just click on execute test set, and if there's a couple of test cases behind it, it will just run one test case after the other. In the current version, record what has been done, so that afterwards the tester can check, okay, is the result something that I expected or not. Yeah, okay. So I would say
Great.
from my end, this was the presentation. So maybe Marcel, if you want to
Yeah.
say a couple of words regarding next steps and so on.
Yeah, maybe we could take the chance to answer just maybe one or two questions pretty quick at the very end. One question is, are there any head unit system logs available?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is something that, of course, can be accessed. Usually, if you talk about log files from the um, from the head unit here, you have a separate piece of hardware like Blue Pirate Box or something that acts as a data logger. And then what you usually have is usually some client application or something that usually grabs these logs. These can be integrated into Remote Test Lab. In fact, this is a use case that I already had in mind. So in software technical terms, I would say it's in the backlog. But then honestly, we have not yet implemented it. Yeah, this is something that is possible, of course. So the procedure would be is okay. There is this usually piece of hardware that extracts the logs files from the hardware itself, and this is where we can grab them with a probably fifth API. Just now we have 4 of them. This would be a fifth API that I have in mind, and then and then elaborate them in a more user-friendly way, so that they can be worked on Remote Test Lab. Yeah, but as I said, this is supposed to be for one of the next versions. Honestly, right now it's not yet there.
Okay, thank you very much. Time is running, so having in mind to close the session in time. Unfortunately, we can't answer all the open questions now, so we're going to send you the questions and answers in a little FAQ together with all the slides and all the details. We have some links prepared as well. As Gregor already mentioned, we have a very short overview video on YouTube. We have our landing page. We have a white paper prepared for you. So there's a lot of stuff that you can explore and dig a bit more deeper into the details of Remote Test Lab that we didn't have the chance to show you in 1 hour. And we're looking forward to discussions with you. raise any question. You will find our contact details also on the slide deck. And for sure, there are a lot of more use cases that we could explore together. So thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much, Gregorio, for the presentation. And
Very
we're highly
welcome.
looking forward to talk to you soon.